A monk springs into position behind an enemy, making good use of the opening left by the imposing sight of his raging barbarian ally. And a rogue sneaks quietly to the back of an unsuspecting archer, driving her daggers into their exposed rear. While most all D&D players are familiar with the optional rule of flanking, less know about its similar cousin, the optional rules for facing, where you track what way any given creature is looking to resolve interactions. So, is there anything many people miss about the flanking rules, and what do these alleged facing rules entail? Quick answer. A creature that is not incapacitated or unable to see can flank with another creature by standing on opposite sides or corners of a creature's space. Any square in a creature's space counts individually for the purposes of flanking. A flanker gains advantage on any attack roll made against the flanked target. If you use hexes, then you're a nerd! I'm kidding. If you use hexes, the number of spaces around the enemy's space determines flanking, which must be equal to the right amount in either direction. 2 for medium, 4 for large, 5 for huge, and 6 for gargantuan. Overall, flanking is a pretty simple rule. I'm displaying the rules on screen now for anyone who wants to check where all that comes from, but the main reason I bring flanking up in this video is because I want to talk about facing, its less appreciated stepsister. Here's the quick answer for how facing works. Quick answer. A creature chooses which way it faces at the end of its movement, or as a reaction. Note, a creature must be aware of a target in order to react to it. Your facing is measured with 4 90-degree cones, 1 to the front, 1 to the back, and 2 to either side. Attackers in the back cone have advantage to hit you, and your shield only protects you in 2 of the cones, the front cone, and the side cone with the hand that you're holding it in. The DM decides if a monster has 1 or more front cones, and whether or not it has a back cone. Any given space around you counts as being in the cone that it is most within, or choose the more beneficial cone if evenly placed between 2 cones. So there's the quick answer for anyone who needed it, but let's have a read of these rules to properly understand them. Optional rule, facing. If you want the precision of knowing which way a creature is facing, consider using this optional rule. Whenever a creature ends its move, it can change its facing. Each creature has a front arc, the direction it faces, left and right side arcs, and a rear arc. A creature can also change its facing as a reaction when any other creature moves. A creature can normally target only creatures in its front or side arcs. It can't see into its rear arc. This means an attacker in the creature's rear arc makes attack rolls against it with advantage. Shields apply their bonus to AC only against attacks from the front arc or the same side arc as the shield. For example, a fighter with a shield on the left arm can only use it against attacks from the front and left arcs. Feel free to determine that not all creatures have every type of arc. For example, an amorphous orca jelly could treat all of its arcs as front ones, while a hydra might have 3 front arcs and 1 rear. On grid squares, you pick one side of a creature's space as the direction it's facing. Draw a diagonal line outwards from each corner of this side to determine the squares in its front arc. The opposite side of the space determines its rear arc in the same way. The remaining spaces to either side of the creature form its side arcs. On hexes, determining the front, rear, and side arcs requires more judgment. Pick one side of the creature's space and create a wedge shape expanding out from there for the front arc, and another on the opposite side of the creature for the rear arc. The remaining spaces to either side of the creature are its side arcs. A square or hex might be in more than one arc, depending on how you draw the lines from the creature's space. If more than half of a square or a hex lies in one arc, it is in that arc. If it is split exactly down the middle, use this rule. If half of it lies in the front arc, it is in that arc. If half of it is in a side arc and the rear arc, it's in the side arc. So needless to say, that is a very interesting rule set. If you haven't watched my video about hiding, while discussing the hiding sidebar, we noted how line of sight in 5th edition is generally considered to be a 360-degree radius during combat. But outside of combat, the DM can allow a hidden creature to sneak up on a distracted one. With these facing rules, however, it is much more clear, both in and out of combat, when a creature can sneak up on another creature, because the way that they are facing will determine where their rear arc is, and that is the space where you can sneak up on a creature in order to attack them without being seen. Something to keep in mind while using the facing rules though, a creature must be aware of a trigger in order to use their reaction. So if a hidden creature does move up behind a target, that target won't become aware of them until the hidden creature attacks, or reveals themselves in some other way. And the advantage given to creatures that attack from the back cone comes from the unseen attackers and targets rule. If you'd like, you can watch my video on hiding up here in the card if you want to learn more about this. Overall, facing rules give a more hard and fast way to determine what exactly happens based on a creature's orientation. Much like flanking though, facing does gain exponentially more strength the more players you have, and once an enemy has used its reaction to reorient itself, players can just take turns moving around it to get into its back cone. But now I would like to bring us to the real topic of discussion for this video, and that is in regards to whether you should use flanking or should you use facing? Or should you be so bold as to use both? Right off the bat, I would certainly advise against using both of these rules at once, mainly for the reason they both provide easy access to advantage on an attack roll. This is obviously of a major concern when it comes to the rogue class, and having not just one way to easily gain their sneak attack, but an additional way that further encourages players to stretch suspended disbelief even more than they normally do in regards to hiding is not something that I'm in favour of as a DM. However, if you want to ensure that your players always have a way to gain advantage on pretty much every attack they make, using both of these rules at once is a surefire way to do it. So, which of these rule sets should you use then? Well, flanking is my personally preferred method. It at least rewards teamwork and forces characters into melee if they want their advantage. Further, flanking works better in larger parties and can be better reflective of how being surrounded would feel in real life. That and a successful stealth check can serve the same purpose in a fight as the facing rules would, and a DM can make judgment calls outside of combat. But what about facing then? Does it have any practical applications or redeeming qualities? Well, yes, it can work better than flanking in some specific scenarios. If your campaign is being played by a smaller party who will make little to no use of flanking, or the story and characters of the campaign are very stealth-oriented, facing can work quite nicely. Facing rules can feel very good in scenarios where less creatures are involved, making openings for your allies by taking a foe's attention in combat, and having to actively decide which direction your shield is pointed in can make for some pretty engaging gameplay. Even if you just don't like flanking, facing is a good alternative in some cases, but the major downside for facing is you have to keep track of it, so in games with lots of player characters and or lots of enemies, it can become a major hassle. In short, facing is far better suited for smaller groups and more cinematic campaigns, while flanking is an easier rule to manage in larger groups where it's better to reward teamwork and minimize the things that you need to keep track of. Well, that's about all I have to talk about for this video. As usual, let me know how you feel about these rule sets. Do you prefer flanking or do you prefer facing? Let me know in the comments and consider subscribing if you enjoy D&D discussions like these. And with that, thank you for watching, have a great day, and may the dice be ever in your favor.